Hello, beautiful. I know who you are, and your new hot to trot status. I'm kidding, of course. I'm joking with you.
I'm having a day. Having a day.
Sorry, I was trying to get away from this guy. I think I lost him.
There's a moment in For Worse that finally lets the movie breathe. Lauren and Dave are standing together, sharing a cigarette, almost like they accidentally wandered into the same quiet corner of the world. They're barely more than strangers, brought together by awkward timing and emotional exhaustion, yet the connection between them feels immediate, warm, alive, charged with possibility. And in that moment, everything clicks. Before we begin, would you please support me? Subscribing is free and very important to me. Please subscribe for better analysis and more videos. This is the kind of chemistry romantic comedies are built on. The kind that feels earned without explanation. Watching them together just feels right, which is exactly why it's so frustrating that this scene arrives so late in the film. By the time it happens, I couldn't stop wondering why the previous hour hadn't trusted this energy enough to lean into it sooner. For Worse isn't a bad movie. There are stretches where it's engaging, even quietly thoughtful. But too much of it settles into a kind of forgettable normalcy that's hard to shake. The real disappointment comes from the sense that this should have been better, that it had the pieces to be genuinely compelling and chose not to push them far enough. Lauren Landecker has proven herself over the years with memorable performances, from Transparent to A Serious Man. Here, in her first outing as both writer and director, she gives herself the lead role. Unfortunately, it's not one of the richest characters she's ever played. Lauren, the character, is likable enough. We meet her as she's finalizing a divorce from Chase, played by Paul Adelstein. Their separation isn't fueled by rage or betrayal. It's something quieter. Two people worn down by time, fatigue replacing anger. And even when a breakup is long overdue, it can still hollow you out once it's finally real. That emotional void is where Lauren spends most of the film. In a small act of rebellion, she signs up for a commercial acting class overseen by Liz, an abrasive and controlling instructor played by Gaby Hoffmann. What starts as a harmless distraction turns into something more when the class introduces her to a group of younger friends, including Sean, a charming man in his 20s played by Nico Hiraga. There's no overwhelming spark between Landecker and Hiraga, but the film doesn't pretend otherwise. Instead, their attraction unfolds shyly, almost awkwardly, from the moment they lock eyes. It's a soft flirtation that carries them all the way to a wedding in Palm Springs for their classmate Maria, played by Kiersey Clemens. One thing For Worse does deserve credit for is its honesty about middle-aged female sexuality. Among recent films exploring older woman-younger man relationships, this one is unusually direct about the unglamorous realities of post-menopausal bodies. Lauren and Sean's first real sexual encounter is cut short by an embarrassing bodily mishap, which Lauren nervously explains as something that can happen after having children. She's mortified. Sean, to his credit, reacts with calm understanding. Later, the script even references vaginal dryness, though Lauren is quick to clarify that it's not something she personally struggles with. If this movie plays even a small role in normalizing conversations around middle-aged female sexuality, it absolutely deserves praise. There's also a clever idea tucked into the background that never quite gets the attention it deserves. The decision to frame Lauren and her classmates as aspiring commercial actors, rather than pursuing theatre or film, is genuinely amusing. As Liz herself points out, television advertising is often seen as the lowest form of acting. That setting could have been mined for sharp industry satire, much like In a World did with voiceover work. Instead, the film mostly sidelines this subplot. Major developments happen off-screen, and the world of commercial acting remains frustratingly underexplored. Beyond those occasional flashes of inspiration, For Worse feels oddly disengaged from its own emotional core. The film doesn't seem interested in fully building the world around Lauren or diving deeply into her inner life. On some level, that makes sense. Grief can narrow your perspective. Lauren is clearly drowning in something she doesn't quite know how to name. The problem is that the film mirrors that same narrowness. Almost every supporting character exists solely in relation to Lauren's journey. Her longtime best friend Julie, played by Missy Pyle, is reduced to a collection of smug, familiar best friend lines. At one point, Lauren even acquires a new gay best friend, played by Spencer Stevenson, a character who feels directly lifted from classic ROMCOM templates rather than shaped into something real. Sean, despite his importance to the story, remains frustratingly opaque. His motivations, fears, and emotional depth are left unexplored. He exists more as a catalyst than a fully realized person. To the script's credit, it doesn't shy away from acknowledging that Lauren can be passive-aggressive and occasionally cruel. One of the film's more satisfying moments involves her teaming up with Sean to teach her ex and his much younger girlfriend, played by Angelique Cabral, a pointed lesson. But the movie never pushes Lauren far enough into darkness to make her truly complex. It won't let her spiral, it won't let her be deeply unlikable, and it won't force the audience to sit fully inside her misery. Even when she tells Julie that she feels like she's losing control, the self-destructive spiral is so mild it barely registers as one. These flaws might have been forgiven if the film's humor landed more consistently. Unfortunately, the comedy often feels broad and outdated. Jokes about a woman in her 50s not understanding modern slang or struggling with gender-neutral pronouns are not inherently absurd, but when the entire joke stops there, it feels thin. Supporting characters like Rick, a wedding guest played by Ken Marino, or Sarah, portrayed by Cabral, lean heavily on tired stereotypes. I kept waiting for the film to subvert those clichés. It never really does. The only moment that truly crackles with life is that final scene between Lauren and Dave, played by Bradley Whitford. Knowing that Landecker and Whitford are married in real life adds an extra layer of authenticity. But even without that context, the scene works. It feels honest, relaxed, earned. Landecker has spoken about drawing from her own divorce experience when writing the script, and in that closing moment, it's easy to feel happy for both her and her fictional counterpart. There's something genuinely touching about watching characters allow themselves joy again after emotional wreckage. I just wish the path to that ending had been more interesting. For Worse isn't without value. It's sincere, it has moments of insight, and it's clearly made with care, but it never fully commits to the emotional or comedic risks that could have made it memorable. If you're still here with me, you probably felt that spark too. That sense that something better was just out of reach. Until next time, keep questioning the almost great movies as much as the bad ones, and I'll see you in the next breakdown.